The knock came at dusk, sharp and deliberate, and when Nathan Jenkins opened the door of his weathered farmhouse, he found himself staring at the most imposing figure he had ever seen. The orc elder stood nearly 7 feet tall, her green skin marked with age lines and ceremonial scars that spoke of battles won and wisdom earned. Gray streaked through her black hair, which was braided with bone beads and leather ties. Her yellow eyes held a fierceness that made Nathan take an involuntary step back, one hand instinctively moving to the doorframe as if to steady himself. But it was not the elder who captured his attention for long. Behind her stood a younger orc woman, perhaps 19 or 20 years old, with skin the color of spring moss and dark eyes that refused to meet his. She was shorter than her grandmother, though still taller than Nathan's own 6 feet, and she held herself with a strange mixture of defiance and vulnerability that made something twist in his chest. "You are the farmer Nathan Jenkins," the elder said. It was not a question. Her voice carried the weight of granite sliding down a mountain. "I am," Nathan replied, confused and wary. His hand moved closer to the hunting knife he kept near the door, though he knew it would be useless against someone like this. The elder placed one massive hand on her granddaughter's shoulder and pushed her forward slightly. The younger orc stumbled, catching herself with practiced grace, and finally looked up at Nathan. Her eyes were wide, terrified, and something else he could not quite name. "She chose you," the elder said, each word deliberate and heavy. "I did not." Nathan's mind reeled. "I'm sorry, what?" The elder's expression remained unchanged, carved from stone in centuries of experience. "My granddaughter Urga has refused every mate offered to her in our clan. She has turned away warriors, hunters, and chieftains' sons. 3 days ago she told me she had chosen a human. You." The word human carried disgust like venom. "I have brought her here as she demanded. Whether you accept or reject her is your decision. I wash my hands of this shame." Urga flinched at her grandmother's words but said nothing. Her hands were clenched at her sides, and Nathan noticed for the first time that she carried a small pack on her back, everything she owned condensed into worn leather and cloth. "Wait," Nathan said, holding up both hands. "I've never met her. How could she have chosen me? There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," the elder growled. "She has watched you from the forest edge for 6 months. She knows your routines, your habits, your character. She has decided you are worthy. I have decided she is a fool." The elder turned to Urga, speaking in the guttural orc tongue for several moments. Urga responded quietly, her voice barely audible, and the elder made a sound of profound disgust before turning back to Nathan. "She says she will explain. I will not stay to hear this foolishness again. If you send her away, she cannot return to our clan. She knows this. The choice is hers, and now yours." With that, the elder turned and walked into the gathering darkness, her footsteps heavy and final. Nathan and Urga stood on opposite sides of the threshold, neither moving, neither speaking. The evening crickets sang around them, and somewhere in the distance Nathan's old hound began to bark at shadows. "I should close the door," Nathan finally said, though he made no move to do so. "Yes," Urga agreed, her voice surprisingly soft. She had a slight accent, rolling her consonants in a way that marked her as someone who had learned the human language rather than grown up with it. "Are you going to come inside or stand out there all night?" Nathan asked. He was not sure why he asked. The sensible thing would be to refuse, to send her away, to pretend this bizarre encounter had never happened. But something in her eyes stopped him. Fear, yes, but also desperate hope, and he remembered what the elder had said. If he sent her away, she could not return home. Urga stepped across the threshold slowly, as if expecting him to strike her or slam the door in her face. When neither happened, she moved further inside, looking around the simple farmhouse with undisguised curiosity. Nathan's home was modest, a single large room that served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a bedroom and small washroom branching off to one side. The furniture was handmade but sturdy, the sort of thing a man built when he had time and skill, but no money for luxuries. A fire burned low in the stone hearth, and the remains of his simple dinner still sat on the wooden table. "You will want an explanation," Urga said, still not looking directly at him. She set her pack down carefully near the door, as if unsure whether she would be allowed to stay long enough to unpack it. "That would be helpful," Nathan replied. trying to keep his voice gentle despite his confusion and growing apprehension. He moved to the table and sat down, gesturing for her to take the other chair. She did, perching on the edge as if ready to bolt at any moment. 6 months ago, I left my clan's territory to hunt, Urga began, her words careful and measured. I went further than I should have, chasing a deer that had evaded me. When I finally brought it down, I was near your farm. I heard shouting. She paused, her hands clenching on the table. There were 3 men, human men, and they had cornered a wolf pup. They were going to kill it for sport, laughing as it snarled and tried to defend itself. I was going to leave. Humans and their cruelty are not my concern. But then you came. Nathan remembered that day, though he had not known anyone was watching. He had been returning from the market town, a 2-hour walk from his farm, when he had heard the commotion near the creek that bordered his property. You stopped them, Urga continued, and now she did look at him, her dark eyes intense. You stood between them and the pup. One of the men was twice your size, and they all had weapons, but you did not move. You told them to leave, that any creature on your land was under your protection. They mocked you, threatened you, but you did not back down. Eventually, they left, and you tended to the pup's injuries before releasing it back into the forest. She took a breath. I had never seen a human do something like that, risk himself for a creature that could not repay him, that he could not use. It made me curious. So you watched me, Nathan said slowly. Yes, there was no apology in her voice, only statement of fact. I came back every few days, always staying hidden. I watched you work your fields, care for your animals, repair your fences. You spoke kindly to your old dog, even though he is no longer useful for hunting. You left food at your property line for the wild creatures who wandered close. You did not curse or drink or rage when things went wrong, as my clan's warriors do. You were patient and gentle and strong in a way I had never seen. Nathan felt heat rise in his cheeks. Those are just normal things. Being decent. Not to orcs, Urga said quietly. Strength in my clan means the ability to dominate, to conquer, to take what you want. Gentleness is weakness. Compassion is foolishness. I've spent my whole life surrounded by warriors who measure worth in scars and glory. My grandmother is a respected elder because she killed 12 human soldiers in the last border war. My father, before he died, was celebrated for his brutality and raids. I was told I should aspire to be like them, to choose a mate who could match their ferocity. But you didn't want that, Nathan said, beginning to understand. I did not, Urga confirmed. I watched you, and I realized that I wanted something different, someone different. I began to learn your language better, listening to you talk to your animals and the occasional visitor. I learned your name when the supply merchant came by and called for you. And I decided that if I was going to choose a mate, someone I would spend my life with, it would be someone like you. Someone kind. Nathan sat back in his chair, overwhelmed. You can't just decide something like that about a stranger. You don't know me. We've never spoken until tonight. You are right, Urga acknowledged. I know only what I have observed. But what I observed was enough to make me willing to risk everything. I knew when I told my grandmother that I would be cast out if you refused me. I knew I would lose my family, my clan, everything I've ever known. But I decided you were worth the risk. What if I'm not the person you think I am? Nathan asked, his voice sharper than he intended. What if I'm cruel in private? What if I'm a liar or a thief? You're willing to throw away your entire life based on 6 months of watching someone work on a farm. Urga met his eyes fully for the first time, and Nathan saw steel beneath the softness. Then I will have made a mistake, and I will deal with the consequences. But I do not think I am wrong. I have watched you carefully, Nathan Jenkins. I have seen you tired and frustrated and sad. I have seen you fail and succeed and struggle. Through all of it, you remained decent. That is rare in humans or orcs. The room fell silent except for the crackling fire. Nathan's mind spun with possibilities, concerns, and a strange, unwanted tenderness for this young orc woman who had gambled everything on a stranger's kindness. What happens now? He finally asked. That is your decision, Urga said. I have chosen you. You can accept me as your mate, and I will stay, learn your ways, help with your farm. Or you can refuse me, and I will leave and make my own way in the world as a clanless wanderer. Either way, I cannot go home. That's not much of a choice for you, Nathan observed. It is the only choice I have, Urga replied. The only choice I wanted. Nathan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening fields. His farm was small, barely enough to support himself, and the work was constant and difficult. He had been alone since his mother died 2 years ago, and while he occasionally felt the sting of loneliness, he had convinced himself he was content with his solitary life. The thought of adding another person, especially an orc woman who would be viewed with suspicion and hatred by every human for miles, seemed like inviting disaster. But he thought of the elder's words. She chose you. I did not. He thought of Urga's courage in approaching him, despite knowing she might be rejected and left alone in a world that would not welcome her. He thought of her dark eyes, filled with hope and fear and something fragile. You can stay, he heard himself say, surprising himself with the words. Not as a mate, not yet. I won't make that kind of commitment to someone I just met. But you can stay here, sleep in the spare room, help around the farm if you want to earn your keep. We'll get to know each other properly, and then we can both make informed decisions. Does that seem fair? Urga's eyes widened, and something like relief flooded her features. More than fair, thank you. Don't thank me yet, Nathan said, turning from the window. People around here are not going to be kind about this. Humans and orcs have been enemies for generations. Having you here is going to cause problems. I know, Urga said quietly. I am prepared for that. Nathan hoped she was right, though he suspected they were both underestimating the challenges ahead. The first 2 weeks were awkward in ways Nathan had not anticipated. Urga kept to herself, speaking only when necessary and spending most of her time doing chores around the farm with an efficiency that bordered on desperate. She was up before dawn, feeding the chickens, tending the vegetable garden, repairing damaged fences, and doing any task she could find without being asked. Nathan realized she was trying to prove her value, to demonstrate that she deserved to stay, and it made his heart ache in unexpected ways. She was also visibly uncomfortable with indoor living. On the third night, Nathan woke to find her sleeping on the floor of the spare room instead of the bed he had prepared. When he asked about it, she admitted that she found the mattress too soft, the walls too confining. She was used to sleeping on packed earth under open sky or in the communal tents of her clan. Nathan solved the problem by helping her build a simple sleeping platform with firmer support, and she seemed genuinely grateful, offering him one of her rare smiles. The smiles were what got to him, Nathan realized. Urga was serious by nature, focused and intense, but when something pleased or amused her, her whole face transformed. Her tusks, small but prominent, gave her smile a distinctly Orcish quality that Nathan found himself watching for more and more often. He learned other things about her during those first weeks. She was an exceptional hunter, able to track and bring down game with skills that made his own abilities look childish. She was also surprisingly knowledgeable about plants, identifying edible and medicinal varieties that grew wild around his property. When he asked about it, she explained that orc women were expected to know such things, to be able to sustain themselves and treat injuries in the wilderness. Do you miss it? Nathan asked one evening as they sat on his porch after a long day of work. He had begun to look forward to this time, when the day's labor was done and they could sit together in comfortable silence or occasional conversation. Your clan, I mean. Your old life. Urga considered the question carefully, as she did most things. I miss some parts. I miss my younger sisters, who may not even remember me now. I miss the stories the elders told around the fire. I miss knowing my place and my purpose. She paused. But I do not miss the violence. I do not miss watching the warriors celebrate cruelty. I do not miss being told that gentleness is weakness and that I should aspire to be hard and cold. So yes, I miss parts of my old life, but I do not regret leaving it. What about your grandmother? Nathan asked. Will you ever see her again? Urga's expression became guarded. If I do, it will be because she has come to tell me someone in the clan has died. She made it clear that I am no longer her granddaughter. I am clanless, and to orcs, that is worse than being dead. Nathan wanted to reach out to her then, to offer comfort, but he held back. Their relationship was still too new, too undefined. Instead, he said, I'm sorry. That's a hard thing to lose. Yes, Urga agreed softly, but I chose it. I would choose it again. The problems Nathan had anticipated began in the fourth week when he took Urga with him to the market town to buy supplies. He had tried to convince her to stay at the farm, knowing what reaction her presence would provoke, but she had insisted on coming. She wanted to see the human town, she said, and she refused to hide as if she were ashamed. The reaction was exactly as bad as Nathan feared. People stared, whispered, and several moved away as they approached. When Nathan entered the general store, the owner, a gruff man named Harold who had always been cordial, looked at Urga with undisguised hostility. "We don't serve her kind here," Harold said flatly. "She's with me," Nathan replied, keeping his voice calm, though anger simmered beneath. "I'm buying supplies, same as always." "Not with that creature in my store, you're not," Harold said. "Orcs have killed good people in this town. My own brother died in a raid 10 years ago. I won't have one under my roof, no matter whose pet she is." Urga's hand clenched at her side, but she said nothing, her expression carefully blank. Nathan felt fury rise in him, hot and sharp. "Then I'll take my business elsewhere," Nathan said coldly. "Come on, Urga." They left the store, and Nathan led her to the smaller trading post on the edge of town. The owner there, a widow named Margaret, looked startled when they entered, but did not refuse them service. She conducted the transaction quickly and efficiently, though she avoided looking directly at Urga. As they were leaving, Margaret caught Nathan's arm. "You be careful," she said quietly. "People are talking already. Some of the younger men, the ones who lost family in the wars, they're angry. They might do something stupid." "Let them try," Nathan said, more bravely than he felt. "Urga hasn't done anything to anyone." "Doesn't matter to some folks," Margaret replied. "To them she's an orc and that's enough. Just watch yourself." As they walked back to the farm, Urga was silent, her shoulders tense. Nathan kept glancing at her, worried about what she was thinking. "I'm sorry," she finally said as they reached the edge of his property. "For what?" Nathan asked, genuinely confused. "For causing you trouble. For making your life harder. You were kind to let me stay, and now you are paying the price for it." "Urga," Nathan said, stopping and turning to face her fully. "You didn't cause anything. Those people and their hatred, that's their choice, not your fault. You've been nothing but helpful and respectful since you arrived. If they can't see past their prejudice, that's their problem, not yours." Urga looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are a strange human, Nathan Jenkins." "So I've been told," Nathan replied with a slight smile. "Come on, let's get these supplies put away. I promised myself I'd fix that broken gate this afternoon, and I could use an extra pair of hands." That night, Nathan lay awake in his bed, thinking about Margaret's warning. He knew she was right to be concerned. Tensions between humans and orcs had been high for generations, and the frontier area where his farm sat had seen more than its share of violence. Having Urga here made him a target, but sending her away felt unthinkable now. In just a month, she had become part of his daily life, and he realized with some surprise that he had grown fond of her steady presence, her quiet competence, and the way she listened intently when he talked about his plans for the farm. He was beginning to understand what she had seen in him during those 6 months of watching, because he was seeing something in her too. Strength, yes, but also gentleness that she hid carefully, as if afraid it would be used against her. Intelligence and curiosity that had been stifled in her clan, but now had room to grow. And underneath everything, a loneliness that matched his own. The trouble came faster than he expected. 3 nights later, Nathan woke to the smell of smoke. He bolted from his bed, heart pounding, and threw open his door to find the barn engulfed in flames. Urga was already outside, trying to get the panicked animals out to safety. Nathan ran to help her, and together they managed to free his old horse and the milk cow, leading them far from the burning structure. By the time the fire burned itself out, the barn was gone, reduced to smoking timber and ash. Nathan stood looking at the destruction, feeling numb. The barn had been his father's work, built decades ago with care and skill. Inside had been tools, stored hay, winter supplies, and equipment that would be expensive to replace. "This was not an accident," Urga said quietly beside him. Her face was smudged with ash and her hands were burned from pulling away flaming boards to free the animals. "No," Nathan agreed, "it wasn't." They found the evidence the next morning, when the ashes were cool enough to examine. Someone had piled kindling at the base of the barn and used lamp oil to make sure it caught and spread quickly. It was deliberate, meant to cause maximum damage. "You should send me away," Urga said as they stood in the ruins. "This is because of me. They are trying to punish you for sheltering me. If I leave, they will stop." "If you leave, they win," Nathan replied firmly. "They get to decide who I can help, who I can care about, what I can do with my own land and my own life. I won't give them that power." "Your barn is gone," Urga pointed out. "What else will they destroy to make their point?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But I know I won't send you away to face the world alone because some coward set a fire in the night. We'll figure this out together." Urga looked at him for a long moment, and Nathan saw her eyes glisten with unshed tears. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly. "Why are you willing to sacrifice so much for someone you barely know? I do not understand you." Nathan took a breath, realizing he was about to make himself vulnerable in a way he had not done in years. "Because in the month you've been here, you've become important to me. Because I've seen who you are, not just what you look like or where you come from. Because when I think about you leaving, about going back to being alone on this farm, it hurts. And because I think maybe you were right about me, and if you were right about me, maybe I'm right about you too." Urga stared at him, clearly shocked. "You are saying you want me to stay? Not as a guest, but as more?" "I'm saying I want to try," Nathan said carefully. "I want to see where this goes if you're willing. I know it's not the traditional way, and I know it's going to be hard, but I think it might be worth it." A tear escaped down Urga's cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, as if ashamed of showing emotion. "I am willing," she said. "I have been willing since I first chose you. I was only waiting for you to choose me back." Nathan felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he had not fully recognized until it released. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. Her skin was rough from hard work, and her hand was larger than his, but it fit well enough. "Then we'll face whatever comes together," he said, "starting with rebuilding that barn." The next weeks were the hardest of Nathan's life. Word spread quickly about the fire, and while no one openly admitted to setting it, everyone seemed to know who was responsible. A group of young men from town, led by a hothead named Derek, whose father had died in an orc raid, had decided to make Nathan an example of what happened to those who consorted with the enemy. The harassment escalated. Fences were cut, allowing animals to wander. The well was fouled with dead animals, forcing Nathan to spend days cleaning and purifying it. His fields were damaged, young crops torn up in the night. Each morning brought new destruction, and Nathan felt himself being pushed to the breaking point. Through it all, Urga remained steady. She worked twice as hard to repair the damage, often staying up through the night to guard the property. She never complained, never suggested leaving, though Nathan knew she must feel the weight of guilt for bringing this trouble to his door. "We could fight back," she said one evening as they surveyed yet another broken fence. "I'm a trained warrior. I could track them, find where they gather, make them pay for what they have done." "No," Nathan said firmly. "That would only prove them right. They want you to act like the monster they think you are. We won't give them that satisfaction." "Then what do we do?" Urga asked, and for the first time, Nathan heard frustration in her voice. "We cannot continue like this forever. The farm cannot sustain this much damage. Winter is coming, and we have lost too many supplies." Nathan knew she was right. They needed help, or they needed to leave, and he was not willing to do the latter. That night, he made a decision that felt both desperate and necessary. The next day, he rode into town alone, leaving Urga at the farm despite her protests. He went straight to the sheriff's office, a small building near the center of town. The sheriff, an older man named Thomas, who had always been fair in his dealings, looked up from his desk with an expression of resignation when Nathan entered. "Nathan," Sheriff Thomas said, "I figured you'd show up eventually." "Someone is trying to destroy my livelihood," Nathan said without preamble. "My barn was burned, my property vandalized, my animals threatened. I want it stopped, and I want the people responsible held accountable." Sheriff Thomas sighed heavily. "I know what's been happening. The whole town knows. But getting proof, getting witnesses willing to testify, that's another matter entirely." "So you're saying you won't help me?" Nathan said, feeling his last hope crumble. "I'm saying I can't help you as much as you need," the sheriff clarified. "Look, Nathan, I'll be straight with you. Most of this town lost someone in the orc wars. People have long memories and deep grievances. You harboring that orc girl, treating her like she's welcome here, it's opened old wounds. I'm not saying what's being done to you is right, but I am saying I understand why people are angry. She hasn't hurt anyone, Nathan said through gritted teeth. She's just trying to live her life. She's an orc, the sheriff replied. To these people, that's enough. My advice is send her back to wherever she came from, and things will settle down. She can't go back, Nathan said. Her clan exiled her. If I send her away, she'll be alone in a world that hates her, with no family and no protection. Is that what you think is just? Sheriff Thomas looked uncomfortable. I think it's not my place to tell a man what's just. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. You keep that orc, and the trouble will continue. Maybe get worse. Maybe escalate to violence. I can't protect you from the entire town, Nathan. Nathan stood, feeling defeat settle over him like a heavy cloak. Then I guess I'm on my own. Nathan, the sheriff called as he reached the door. I really am sorry. If it were just a few troublemakers, I could handle it. But when it's the sentiment of most of the town, there's not much I can do. Be careful, and think hard about whether she's worth it. Nathan rode back to the farm in silence, his mind churning with dark thoughts. When he arrived, he found Urga waiting anxiously on the porch. What did the sheriff say? She asked immediately. That we're on our own, Nathan replied, dismounting heavily. That the town's anger is too widespread for him to counter, that I should send you away. He looked at her, seeing the fear and resignation in her eyes. I told him no. Urga's expression crumpled, and she turned away quickly, but not before Nathan saw the tears. He went to her, putting a hand on her shoulder. I mean it, Urga. I'm not giving up on this, on us. You should, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm not worth this much trouble. I'm not worth losing everything you have built. Let me decide what you're worth to me, Nathan said gently. He turned her to face him, and for the first time since they had met, he pulled her into an embrace. She stiffened at first, clearly unused to such displays of affection, but then she melted against him, her arms coming up to clutch at his back. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the fading light while the farm deteriorated around them. That night, they talked late into the evening, planning and strategizing. Nathan explained his finances, showing Urga exactly how precarious their situation had become. The loss of the barn and its contents, combined with the ongoing damage to crops and property, had left him in a dangerous position. Without a good harvest, or the ability to sell his produce at market, he would not have enough to make it through the winter. I have some money, Urga said hesitantly. Not much, but I took what I could when I left my clan. Coins from raids, things I traded. It is yours if it will help. Nathan was touched by the offer, but knew it would not be enough. We need a different approach, he said. We can't keep just defending and repairing. We need to find a way to make peace with the town, or at least make them see that you're not a threat. How? Urga asked. They have already decided what I am. Nathan thought about it, an idea beginning to form. What if we showed them? What if we found a way to prove that you're not the monster they think you are? I do not understand. There's a family on the edge of town, the Fentons. Their youngest daughter, Emma, got sick last spring and never fully recovered. The doctor doesn't know what's wrong with her, but she's been getting weaker. You said you know about healing plants, about orc medicine. What if you could help her? Urga looked doubtful. Even if I could, why would they let me try? They would not trust orc medicine. Maybe not, Nathan admitted. But the Fentons are desperate. I know Arthur Fenton from the market. He's a good man, not one of the ones causing us trouble. If we approached him carefully, explained that you might be able to help, he might be willing to try. And if it works, if you save his daughter, people might start to see you differently. And if it does not work? Urga asked quietly. If I try and fail, or if I try and they blame me for making things worse? Then we're no worse off than we are now, Nathan said, though he knew that was not quite true. Failure could turn the town's anger into active violence, but doing nothing would lead to the same end, just more slowly. It's a risk, but I think it's one worth taking. Urga was quiet for a long time, thinking. Finally, she nodded. I will try. For you, and for the chance to prove I am more than what they believe me to be. The next day, Nathan rode to the Fenton farm, a modest property about an hour from his own. Arthur Fenton was working in his field when Nathan arrived, and the older man greeted him with cautious warmth. "Nathan, good to see you. Been hearing some troubling things about your situation." "That's actually why I'm here," Nathan said. "I need to talk to you about Emma." Arthur's expression immediately became guarded. "What about her?" "I know she's been sick. I know the doctor hasn't been able to help. I might know someone who can." "Who?" Arthur asked skeptically. "The orc woman staying with me. Her name is Urga. She has training in orc healing practices, knowledge of plants and remedies that human doctors don't use. She might be able to identify what's wrong with Emma and treat it." Arthur's face darkened. "You want me to let an orc near my daughter? Are you insane?" "I know how it sounds," Nathan said quickly. "But Arthur, your daughter is dying. I've seen Emma in town. She's so thin now, so weak. What do you have to lose by letting Urga try?" "What do I have to lose?" Arthur repeated incredulously. "My daughter's life, that's what. What if this orc poisons her? What if she makes things worse?" "Why would she?" Nathan challenged. "Urga has never hurt anyone. She left her clan because she didn't want to live a life of violence. All she wants is a chance to prove she's not a monster. Let her examine Emma. If she says she can't help, fine, we'll leave and never bother you again. But if she thinks she can help, give her a chance. Please." Arthur looked torn, his desperation warring with his prejudice. "Martha would never agree. You know how she feels about orcs. Her brother was killed at the Battle of Stone Creek." "I know," Nathan said quietly. "But would she rather hold on to her hatred or have her daughter back? Ask her. Tell her what I said. If she says no, I'll respect that. But ask her." Arthur looked toward his house where Nathan knew Emma lay in her sickbed, wasting away day by day. "I'll talk to her," he finally said, "but I'm not promising anything." 2 days later, a messenger came to Nathan's farm with a note from Arthur. It was brief and to the point. "Come tomorrow at midday. Martha has agreed to let the orc try, but if anything happens to Emma, I will hold you both responsible." Nathan showed the note to Urga, who read it with an expression that mixed determination with fear. "I must prepare," she said immediately. "I will need to gather specific plants, make certain preparations. If I am to do this, I must do it properly." They spent the rest of the day and most of the night gathering materials. Urga led Nathan through the forest, identifying plants with confidence and explaining their properties. Some were familiar to him, common herbs he had seen before. Others were strange, with unusual colors or smells that made him nervous. "You are certain these will help, not harm?" he asked as she carefully uprooted a plant with dark purple leaves. "Nothing is certain in healing," Urga replied. "But I know these plants. I have seen them used many times in my clan. They are powerful, yes, but not dangerous if used correctly. The doctor's failure to help this girl suggests her illness is not a common one. It may be something my people would recognize that yours do not." The next day, they arrived at the Fenton farm exactly at midday. Arthur met them outside, his expression grave. "Martha is with Emma. She's agreed to this, but she's not happy about it. Keep your orc calm and quick. The less time this takes, the better." "Her name is Urga," Nathan said firmly, "and she's here to help." They entered the house, and Nathan immediately noticed how dark and warm it was inside. Every window was shuttered, and a fire blazed in the hearth despite the moderate temperature outside. Arthur led them to a small bedroom where Emma lay on a bed, covered in blankets despite the heat. Her mother, Martha, sat beside her, looking at Urga with undisguised hostility. Emma herself was shocking to see. Nathan had not visited the Fentons in months, and the change in the girl was dramatic. She had always been thin, but now she was skeletal, her skin pale and waxy, her eyes sunken. She looked more dead than alive. "This is the orc," Arthur said unnecessarily. Urga stepped forward slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening. "My name is Urga. I'm here to help if I can. May I examine your daughter?" Martha's jaw clenched, but she nodded stiffly and moved away from the bed. Urga approached carefully and knelt beside Emma, who looked at her with dull, incurious eyes. "Hello, Emma," Urga said softly. "I'm going to look at you and ask you some questions. Is that all right?" Emma nodded weakly. Urga began her examination, checking Emma's eyes, tongue, and skin with gentle thoroughness. She asked questions about symptoms, diet, and when the illness had started. Emma's voice was barely a whisper as she answered, and Urga had to lean close to hear. After several minutes, Urga stood and turned to the parents. I believe I know what is wrong. It is not a sickness in the way you think of it. It is a deficiency, a lacking of something your body needs. My people call it the wasting sickness. It happens when someone does not get enough iron in their food. It makes you weak, tired, unable to heal properly. Iron, Martha said skeptically. She eats plenty. We make sure she has food. But what kind of food? Urga asked. Let me guess. Bread, vegetables, milk, cheese. But not much meat, especially not red meat or organ meats. Is that correct? Arthur and Martha exchanged glances. We're not wealthy people, Arthur said defensively. We can't afford meat at every meal. But she gets enough to survive. Enough for a healthy person, maybe, Urga said. But she is not healthy. Her body is consuming itself trying to function without what it needs. If this continues, she will die. The bluntness of the statement made Martha gasp. But Urga continued. But it can be fixed. She needs to eat foods rich in iron, red meat, liver, dark leafy greens. I have also brought plants that can help her body use what iron it gets more efficiently. With proper treatment and diet, she will recover. How long? Arthur asked, and Nathan heard hope beginning to crack through his doubt. Weeks, not days, Urga replied honestly. She is very depleted. But you should see improvement within a few days if we start treatment immediately. I will prepare a tonic from the plants I brought. She must drink it twice a day, and you must feed her meat as much as she can eat, especially liver, cooked with onions and herbs to make it palatable. Martha looked at her daughter, then back at Urga. You're certain this will work? I am certain it is the correct diagnosis, Urga said. I have seen this illness before, and I have seen it cured. But I cannot promise results. Every person is different, and she is very sick. But without treatment, she will certainly die. With treatment, she has a strong chance to live. The room fell silent as Arthur and Martha considered. Finally, Arthur spoke. Do it. Make your tonic. We'll get the meat. And if you're wrong, or if you harm my daughter, I'll kill you myself. If I am wrong, I will accept that judgment, Urga said simply. They spent the next hour in the Fenton kitchen, with Urga preparing her medicine, while Martha watched suspiciously, and Nathan tried to stay out of the way. Urga worked with practiced efficiency, grinding leaves, steeping roots in hot water, and combining ingredients in precise measurements. The result was a dark, bitter-smelling liquid that made Nathan's nose wrinkle. She will not like the taste, Urga warned as she poured some into a cup, but she must drink all of it. They returned to Emma's room, and Urga helped the girl sit up enough to drink. Emma grimaced at the first taste, but obediently finished the cup. Urga then gave detailed instructions to Martha about diet, dosage, and what signs to watch for that would indicate improvement or problems. As they were preparing to leave, Emma spoke, her voice a little stronger than before. Thank you for trying to help me. Urga smiled, a genuine warm expression that transformed her face. You are welcome, little one. Be strong, and you will get better. Outside, Arthur walked them to their wagon. I don't know if I trust this, he admitted, but I appreciate you trying. I'll send word in a few days, let you know how she's doing. That's all I ask, Urga said, a chance to prove myself. The ride home was quiet. Nathan kept glancing at Urga, seeing the tension in her shoulders and the worry in her eyes. You did well, he said. You were professional and kind. You gave them hope. I gave them a treatment that may or may not work, Urga replied. If Emma dies, they will blame me. The entire town will blame me. This could make everything much worse. Or it could make everything better, Nathan countered. You have to have faith. Urga looked at him, and Nathan saw vulnerability in her expression. Faith is hard when you have spent your life being told you are worthless. My clan never valued my healing knowledge. They said it was woman's work, unimportant compared to warrior skills. My grandmother once told me that I wasted time learning about plants when I should have been learning to kill. And now I have gambled everything on that wasted knowledge being enough to save a human child. Nathan reached over and took her hand, squeezing it firmly. Your knowledge is not worthless. You are not worthless, and whatever happens, we'll face it together. The next 3 days were agonizing. Nathan and Urga continued their work on the farm, but their minds were elsewhere, constantly wondering about Emma. The vandalism had stopped temporarily, as if the town was waiting to see what would happen with the Fenton girl before deciding their next move. On the fourth day, Arthur Fenton himself arrived at the farm. Nathan's heart sank when he saw the man's serious expression, fearing the worst. But as Arthur dismounted and approached, Nathan saw something he had not expected to see: tears in the older man's eyes. She's better," Arthur said, his voice breaking. "Emma sat up this morning on her own. She ate a full breakfast for the first time in months. She still looks terrible, but there's color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. Your orc was right. She's getting better." Urga had come out of the barn where she had been working, and she stood frozen, clearly afraid to believe what she was hearing. Arthur turned to her directly. "You saved my daughter's life," he said. "I don't care what you are or where you came from. You saved my daughter when no one else could. I am in your debt." Urga looked stunned. "I only did what any healer would do." "No," Arthur said firmly. "You did what you knew how to do, even knowing that if you failed, you would be blamed and possibly killed. That's courage. That's compassion, and I was wrong about you." He looked at Nathan. "I'll be spreading word in town about what happened. Can't promise it will change everyone's minds, but it should help. At least people will know that the orc living here is not a threat." After Arthur left, Urga sat down heavily on the porch steps, as if her legs could no longer support her. Nathan sat beside her, and they remained there in silence for several minutes. "I cannot believe it worked," Urga finally said. "I was so afraid I had misdiagnosed that I would make things worse." "But you didn't," Nathan said. "You trusted your training and your instincts, and you saved a little girl's life. You should be proud." Urga turned to look at him, and Nathan saw tears streaming down her green cheeks. "I have never been told I did something good before. In my clan, the best I ever heard was that I was acceptable, adequate. Never that I was valuable or that I had done something worth celebrating." Nathan could not stop himself. He reached out and pulled her close, letting her cry against his shoulder. He felt her shake with the force of emotions she had clearly been holding back for days, maybe years. He held her and let her release it all, understanding in that moment just how much courage it had taken for her to walk up to his door that first night and risk everything on the hope that he might be different from everyone else she had known. The change in the town's attitude was not dramatic, but it was noticeable. When Nathan went to market the next week, people still stared, but the hostility had diminished. A few people even nodded to him, and Margaret at the trading post asked how the orc woman was doing with genuine interest rather than suspicion. The harassment stopped completely. The young men who had been vandalizing the farm apparently decided that attacking someone who had saved a child's life was a step too far, even for them. Nathan was finally able to focus on rebuilding what had been destroyed, and with Urga's help, the work went faster than he had anticipated. Emma continued to improve, and Martha Fenton brought her to visit the farm once she was strong enough to travel. The girl hugged Urga with enthusiastic gratitude, chattering about how much better she felt and how she was going to be strong enough to help her father with the harvest. "Thank you again," Martha said to Urga, her voice sincere. "I was wrong about you. I let my grief and anger blind me to the fact that you're just a person trying to live her life. I'm sorry for how I thought about you." "You do not need to apologize," Urga said. "I understand why humans fear orcs. My people have given you many reasons. I only hope to prove that not all orcs are the same, just as not all humans are the same." As summer turned to autumn, Nathan found himself falling in love. It was not a sudden realization, but a gradual understanding that crept up on him through shared work, quiet evenings, and small moments of connection. He loved the way Urga hummed while working in the garden, old orc songs in a language he did not understand. He loved her fierce determination to prove herself, to be more than what her clan had told her she could be. He loved her unexpected gentleness with animals and her dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. He loved the way she looked at him, as if he was something precious and rare, but he was not sure how to tell her. Their relationship had grown close, affectionate even, but they had never explicitly defined what they were to each other. She still slept in the spare room, though they spent most of their time together. They worked side by side, ate meals together, sat on the porch in the evenings talking until the stars came out. But Nathan had not kissed her, had not told her what was in his heart, held back by uncertainty and fear that he might be misreading what she felt. It was Urga who finally forced the issue. One evening in early October, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, she turned to him with unusual intensity. "Nathan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "All right," Nathan said, immediately alert to the seriousness in her tone. "What am I to you?" she asked. "Am I a guest who has overstayed her welcome? Am I a worker you tolerate because I am useful? Or am I something more?" Nathan's heart began to race. "What do you want to be?" "Do not answer my question with a question," Urga said firmly. "I chose you months ago. I have been here for over 3 months now, and I still do not know if you have chosen me back or if you are simply too kind to send me away. I need to know. Am I your mate, or am I simply the orc who lives in your spare room?" Nathan took a breath, knowing this was the moment to be brave. "You're the woman I think about when I wake up in the morning and when I fall asleep at night. You're the person I want to share every small victory and every frustration with. You're the one who makes me laugh and makes me think and makes me want to be better than I am. You're not just the orc in the spare room, Urga. You're the person I love." Urga's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked completely vulnerable. "You love me?" "Yes," Nathan said simply. "I have for a while now. I just did not know how to tell you." "You are an idiot," Urga said, but there was no heat in her words, only affection. "I've been waiting for you to say something, to give me a sign that you felt more than responsibility or pity. Do you know how many times I have wanted to kiss you but held back because I was afraid you would reject me?" "Probably about as many times as I have wanted to kiss you and held back for the same reason," Nathan admitted. They looked at each other, and then suddenly they were both laughing, the tension breaking like a dam. When the laughter subsided, Nathan reached out and cupped Urga's face gently, giving her time to pull away. She did not. Instead, she leaned forward, and their lips met in a kiss that was tender and awkward and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, Urga rested her forehead against Nathan's, her eyes closed. "I choose you," she whispered. "Today and every day, I choose you." "And I choose you," Nathan replied. "Today and every day, I choose you." That night, things changed between them in subtle but significant ways. Urga moved her belongings from the spare room to Nathan's room, and they fell asleep tangled together, finally allowing themselves the closeness they had both wanted for months. Nathan discovered that Urga was surprisingly cuddly, despite her warrior background, and that she slept with one hand always touching him as if to reassure herself that he was real. The next weeks were the happiest of Nathan's life. He had not realized how lonely he had been until he had someone to share his life with completely. They worked together during the day and spent evenings planning their future, talking about what they would plant in the spring, how they would expand the farm, what kind of life they wanted to build together. "I want children someday," Urga admitted one night. "Is that possible? Between humans and orcs?" "I don't know," Nathan said honestly. "I've never heard of it happening, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Would it bother you if we couldn't?" "No," Urga said thoughtfully. "There are other ways to build a family. We could foster children who need homes, human or orc or both. But I would like to try if you want to." "I do," Nathan said, pulling her closer. "I want everything with you." As winter approached, Nathan knew he needed to make things official. In human society, that meant marriage, a public declaration of commitment. He was not sure how orcs approached such things, so he asked Urga one evening as they prepared dinner together. "In your clan, how did people formalize their partnerships? Was there a ceremony or ritual?" Urga looked thoughtful. "There are several traditions. The most common is the blood oath, where partners cut their palms and bind them together, mingling their blood while making vows before the clan elders. It is meant to symbolize that you are now one family, one blood, but that requires elders to witness. And I have no clan." "What about human marriage?" Nathan asked. "Would you be willing to do that? It's simpler, really. We would go to the town minister, have him perform a ceremony, and he would record us as legally married. Then we would be recognized as husband and wife under human law." Urga was quiet for a moment. Would they allow it? A human marrying an orc? "I don't know," Nathan admitted, "but I'd like to try. I want the whole world to know that you're mine and I'm yours. I want it to be official and legal and real." "Then yes," Urga said, smiling. "I will marry you. Nathan Jenkins. Though I warn you, I know nothing about human weddings. You will have to teach me. The next day, Nathan rode to town to speak with Minister Paul, the elderly man who had led the local church for decades. Paul was a practical, thoughtful man, and Nathan hoped he would be understanding. "You want to marry the orc woman," Minister Paul said after Nathan had explained the situation. It was not a question. "Her name is Urga, and yes, I do," Nathan confirmed. "I know it's unusual, but I love her, and I want to make our relationship official." Minister Paul leaned back in his chair, studying Nathan carefully. "The church has no official doctrine about cross-species marriage, mostly because no one ever thought it would be necessary. But I am not aware of any law, religious or secular, that would prevent it. The question is whether it's wise." "Why wouldn't it be?" Nathan asked, feeling defensive. "Because marriage is more than a declaration of love," Minister Paul said gently. "It is a public act that will be judged by society. You and Urga will face prejudice, perhaps violence. Any children you might have will face it even more. I am not saying you should not marry her. I am saying you should understand what you are committing to." "I do understand," Nathan said firmly, "and I'm willing to face it. Urga has already given up everything to be with me. The least I can do is give her the security and recognition of marriage." Minister Paul nodded slowly. "Then I will perform the ceremony. But I suggest you do it quietly, with just a few witnesses. A large public wedding might provoke more trouble than you want." They set the date for 2 weeks later, giving Nathan time to prepare. He invited only a few people: the Fentons, Margaret from the trading post, and Sheriff Thomas, who had been slowly warming to Urga as word of her healing skills spread. Urga had no one to invite, having been cut off from her clan, and Nathan's heart ached for her isolation. "I wish your family could be here," Nathan said as they discussed the plans one evening. "I wish they could see how happy you are, how good you are." "They made their choice," Urga said, though Nathan heard the pain beneath her practical tone. "And I made mine. I do not regret it." 2 days before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Nathan and Urga were working in the field when Urga suddenly stiffened, her head tilting as if listening to something he could not hear. "What is it?" Nathan asked, immediately alert. "Someone is coming," Urga said quietly, "from the forest, moving slowly, carefully, not trying to hide, but not announcing themselves either." They watched the tree line, and after a moment, a figure emerged. Nathan recognized the imposing form immediately, even at a distance. It was the orc elder, Urga's grandmother, walking toward the farm with measured, deliberate steps. Urga made a small sound of distress and took a step back. Nathan moved closer to her, offering support through his presence. They waited as the elder approached, and when she was close enough to speak, she stopped and looked at Urga with an expression that was hard to read. "Grandmother," Urga said, her voice steady, though Nathan could feel her trembling beside him. "Why have you come?" "I have heard things," the elder said, her voice as gravelly as Nathan remembered. "Strange things. That my granddaughter, the disappointment who chose shame over honor, has been healing human children, that she has become valuable to the human settlement, that she is respected." The elder's eyes narrowed. "I came to see if these stories were true." "They are true," Urga said, lifting her chin. "I used the healing knowledge you told me was worthless to save a child's life. I used the compassion you told me was weakness to earn the trust of people who hated me. And I have found happiness with the man I chose, the man you despised." The elder looked at Nathan, her gaze assessing and cold. "You still want her, even knowing what she has cost you? Your barn, your peace, the goodwill of your community? All of which has been restored and more." Nathan replied evenly. "Urga is worth everything I have and everything I might lose. She is my partner, my love, and in 2 days, she will be my wife." The elder's expression shifted, something like surprise crossing her weathered features. "Wife. You use the human bonding word." "We're getting married, yes," Nathan confirmed, "making our commitment official and legal." The elder was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, less hard. "I was wrong." The words seemed to cost her something. "I told you that you were foolish, that your choice of this human showed weakness. But you were brave, braver than I gave you credit for. You left everything you knew for an uncertain future, and you have built something good. That is warrior's courage, just expressed differently than I understood. Urga's eyes filled with tears. Grandmother, I cannot undo your exile, the elder interrupted. The clan has spoken, and my voice alone cannot reverse their decision. But I can give you my blessing for what it is worth. You chose well, Urga. This human is weak in body compared to our people, but strong in spirit. He has protected you, stood beside you, refused to abandon you even when it would have been easier. Those are the qualities of a good mate. She reached into the pack she carried and pulled out a bundle of cloth. This was your mother's, she said, handing it to Urga. She wore it when she bonded with your father. I thought you might want it for your human ceremony. Urga took the bundle with shaking hands and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautiful garment, a tunic of soft leather decorated with intricate beadwork and embroidery. It was clearly Orcish in design, but elegant and lovely. Thank you, Urga whispered, clutching the garment to her chest. Thank you, grandmother. The elder nodded once, then turned to leave. But she paused after a few steps and looked back. If you have children, and if you wish to teach them about their Orc heritage, you may send word. I will come and tell them the stories of their people. They should know where they come from, even if they are half-human. Then she was gone, disappearing into the forest as silently as she had appeared. Urga stood holding her mother's garment, tears streaming down her face, and Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, holding her as she cried. She gave me her blessing, Urga said through her tears. I never thought I would have my family's approval. I had accepted that I would never have it. You have it now, Nathan said softly. Not everything you lost, but something. A connection, a possibility for the future. I cannot believe she came, Urga said, turning in his arms to face him. She who is so proud, so unbending, came here to admit she was wrong and to give me her blessing. I do not know what to feel. Feel whatever you need to feel, Nathan said, wiping tears from her cheeks. This is allowed to be complicated. You can be happy she came and still hurt from being exiled. You can be grateful for her blessing and still angry that it took so long. It doesn't have to be simple. Urga laughed through her tears. How did I get so lucky to find you? I ask myself the same thing about you every day, Nathan replied. The day of the wedding arrived with clear skies and cool autumn air. Urga wore her mother's tunic, and Nathan wore the best clothes he owned, simple but clean and well made. They walked together to the church, a small building on the edge of town where Minister Paul and their few guests were waiting. The ceremony was short but meaningful. Minister Paul spoke about commitment, partnership, and the courage it takes to love someone in the face of adversity. Nathan and Urga exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to stand together through whatever came, to support and cherish each other, to build a life based on respect and love. When Minister Paul pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed Urga with all the love and hope he felt, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. Their small group of witnesses clapped, and Nathan saw that even Sheriff Thomas was smiling. Afterward, they held a simple celebration at the farm. Margaret had brought food, the Fentons had contributed wine, and everyone sat together on the porch and in the yard, eating and talking and laughing. Emma Fenton, now healthy and energetic, spent most of the evening asking Urga questions about Orc culture, fascinated by everything she learned. As the sun set and their guests began to leave, Arthur Fenton pulled Nathan aside. You've got something special here, he said. Don't let anyone tell you different. That woman of yours, she's got a good heart. You treat her right. I intend to, Nathan promised. When everyone had gone and they were alone, Nathan and Urga stood in their yard, looking at the farm they would now build together as husband and wife. The barn Nathan had rebuilt stood sturdy and strong. The fields were prepared for winter. The house was warm and welcoming, a real home now rather than just a place to sleep. What are you thinking? Nathan asked, holding Urga close. Bitad. I am thinking about how different my life is from what I imagined, Urga said. When I watched you from the forest all those months ago, I hoped you might accept me. I hoped we might build something together. But I never imagined this. I never imagined being so happy, so complete. Neither did I, Nathan admitted. I thought I was content being alone, but I was just Existing, not living. You changed that. You made me want more, want better, want a future instead of just the next day's work. They went inside as the last light faded from the sky, closing the door on the world outside and retreating into the warmth of their home. They made love slowly, tenderly, taking time to appreciate each other and the commitment they had made. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking quietly about their dreams and plans. "I want to expand the farm," Nathan said. "Maybe get more animals, plant a bigger garden. With both of us working, we could do more, sell more at market, build something substantial." "I want to learn more healing," Urga said. Emma was not the only sick person in the area. "If I could help others, if I could become known as a healer rather than just an orc, it would be good for us and good for them." "We could do both," Nathan said. "Build a farm and a healing practice. Maybe eventually we could take in apprentices, teach others what we know, create something that lasts beyond just us." "I would like that," Urga said, smiling in the darkness. "I would like to build something that matters, that helps people, that proves that orcs and humans can coexist peacefully." "Then that's what we'll do," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "Together." The winter that followed was challenging but manageable. Nathan and Urga worked hard to maintain the farm, to keep their animals healthy, and to weather the storms that swept through the region. Urga also began to carefully offer her healing services to the community, and slowly people began to seek her out. A farmer with a persistent cough, a child with a rash the doctor could not identify, an elderly woman with joint pain that made movement difficult. One by one, Urga helped them, and her reputation grew. By spring, the hostility that had once surrounded her presence had almost completely disappeared. She was no longer just the orc living with Nathan Jenkins. She was Urga Jenkins, the healer, the woman who had saved Emma Fenton, the orc who was different. People still stared sometimes, still found her unusual, but the fear and hatred had been replaced with curiosity and, in some cases, respect. Nathan watched his wife flourish with pride and love. She had come so far from the frightened young woman who had stood at his door with her grandmother, risking everything on hope. She had found her place, her purpose, and her family in him and in the community that had slowly accepted her. One spring evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Urga placed Nathan's hand on her stomach and smiled. "I have something to tell you." Nathan's heart began to race as he understood what she was implying. "Are you?" "Yes," Urga said, her eyes bright with joy and fear. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Nathan pulled her close, overwhelmed with emotion. A baby, their baby, half human, half orc, a symbol of everything they had built together and everything they hoped for the future. "The date. Are you happy?" Urga asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we talked about children, but we did not plan this so soon. If you are not ready—" "I am so happy," Nathan interrupted. "Urga, you have given me everything. A home, a purpose, love, and now a family. I could not be happier." They sat together as the sky darkened, planning and dreaming about the child they would soon meet. They talked about names, about how they would raise a child who belonged to two worlds. They talked about the challenges they would face and the love they would provide. "Our child will be special," Urga said, "different from both humans and orcs. They may struggle to find where they belong." "Then we will make sure they know they belong with us," Nathan said firmly. "And we will teach them to be proud of both halves of their heritage. We will raise them to be strong and kind and brave, just like their mother. And patient and compassionate and good, just like their father," Urga added. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Urga continued her healing work almost until the day of the birth. The community rallied around them, with women who had once refused to speak to Urga now offering advice and support. Martha Fenton was particularly helpful, sharing her own experiences and promising to be present for the birth. When the time came on a warm summer night, Urga gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He had his mother's green skin and pointed ears, but his father's facial structure and brown eyes. He was beautiful and perfect, and when Nathan held him for the first time, he wept with joy. They named him Marcus, a strong human name that Nathan's father had carried. But they also gave him an orc name, Crag, which meant brave in the orc tongue. He would be Marcus Crag Jenkins, a bridge between two peoples, a symbol of hope. A week after Marcus was born, the orc elder returned. She came quietly, as before, but this time her expression was softer. Urga met her at the door, holding Marcus carefully. "Grandmother," Urga said, "meet your great-grandson, Marcus Cragg." The elder looked at the baby for a long moment, and Nathan saw her eyes glisten. She reached out carefully and touched Marcus's tiny hand, and he gripped her finger with infant strength. "He is strong," the elder said. "He will need to be, belonging to two worlds that do not always understand each other, but he has good parents who will teach him what he needs to know." "Will you tell him the orc stories?" Urga asked. "Will you teach him about his heritage, as you promised?" "I will," the elder confirmed. "I will come every season, and I will teach him the history of our people, the songs and stories that have been passed down through generations. He will know where he comes from." "Thank you," Urga said, and Nathan heard the depth of emotion in her voice. The elder nodded, then looked at Nathan directly. "You have done well, human. You have protected my granddaughter, given her a good life, and now you have given me a great-grandson. I was wrong to doubt her choice. You are worthy of her." "I try to be," Nathan said honestly. "Every day." The elder left after an hour, but she kept her promise, returning every few months to spend time with Marcus and teach him about his orc heritage. As Marcus grew, he learned to navigate both worlds, speaking both the human language and the orc tongue, learning both human customs and orc traditions. The farm prospered under Nathan and Urga's care, growing from a modest homestead into a thriving operation. Urga's healing practice expanded as well, and she became known throughout the region as someone who could help when conventional medicine failed. They eventually built a small clinic on their property where Urga could see patients and store her medicines. Other orc-human relationships began to develop in the area, tentatively at first, but with growing confidence as people saw Nathan and Urga's success. The prejudice did not disappear completely, but it diminished, replaced slowly with understanding and, in some cases, acceptance. Years passed, and Nathan and Urga had two more children, a daughter named Amelia Shara and another son named Noah Drac. Their children grew up strong and healthy, proud of both their human and orc heritage. They attended the human school but also learned orc skills from their great-grandmother. They were accepted by most, though not all, and they learned to handle prejudice with the grace and strength their parents modeled. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan and Urga stood in the same place they had stood on their wedding night, looking at the farm they had built together. The barn was larger now, the fields more extensive, the house expanded to accommodate their growing family. But more than the physical changes, Nathan marveled at the life they had created, the family they had built, the love they had nurtured. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked, pulling Urga close. "Choosing me? Leaving everything you knew?" "Never," Urga said firmly. "You are the best choice I ever made, Nathan Jenkins. You and this life we have built together. I would choose you 1,000 times over." "I would choose you 1,000 times over too," Nathan replied, kissing her softly. "Today and every day, I choose you." They stood together as the sun set, the sounds of their children playing in the yard behind them, and Nathan felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected journey that had begun with a knock on his door and an elder's reluctant words. "She chose you. I did not." Those words had changed everything, had led him to love and family, and a life more rich than he had ever imagined possible. In the distance, Nathan saw a figure at the edge of the forest, watching. The orc elder, still keeping her promise, still watching over her granddaughter and great-grandchildren. She raised one hand in acknowledgement, and Nathan raised his in return. Then she disappeared into the trees, leaving Nathan and Urga to their sunset, their family, and the life they had fought so hard to build. "Come on," Urga said, tugging Nathan's hand. "Marcus wants you to tell him a story before bed, and Amelia insists on showing you the drawing she made today. Our family's waiting." "Our family," Nathan repeated, savoring the words. He let Urga lead him inside, into the warmth and noise and love of the home they had created together, and his heart was full. The years that followed brought their own challenges and joys. Marcus grew into a thoughtful young man who wanted to study human medicine and combine it with his mother's orc healing knowledge. Amelia showed a talent for farming and animal husbandry, working alongside her father and dreaming of one day running the farm herself. Noah, the youngest, was fascinated by stories and history, spending hours with his great-grandmother learning about Orc culture and traditions. Nathan and Urga grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced hardships as all families do. Crops failed some years, animals got sick, money was tight sometimes, but they faced everything together, never wavering in their commitment to each other and their family. The community continued to change around them. More Orc-human relationships developed, and soon there were several mixed families in the region. The prejudice that had once been so pervasive began to fade, though it never disappeared completely. Nathan and Urga's family was seen as pioneers, as the ones who had proven it was possible for the two peoples to coexist peacefully. When Nathan turned 50, his children threw him a party at the farm. Nearly 100 people attended, humans and Orcs alike, all coming to celebrate the man who had helped bridge two worlds. Urga stood beside him throughout, her hand in his, her presence as steady and essential as it had been from the beginning. "I have been so blessed," Nathan said in his short speech to the gathered crowd. "I have lived a life full of love and purpose, and it all started the day an Orc woman chose me. Urga, you changed everything. You made me better, made me braver, made me believe that love could overcome anything. Thank you for choosing me." Urga smiled, her tusks gleaming in the lantern light, and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for choosing me back," she replied. "Thank you for seeing me, not as an Orc or a monster, but as a person worthy of love. Thank you for fighting for us when it would have been easier to give up. Thank you for being exactly who I hoped you would be when I watched you from the forest all those years ago." The crowd applauded, and Nathan pulled Urga close, kissing her despite their audience. Their children cheered, and Marcus called out something embarrassing about his parents being too affectionate, which made everyone laugh. As the party continued into the night, Nathan found a quiet moment to stand apart and observe. He saw his children laughing with friends, both human and Orc. He saw his farm, thriving and successful. He saw his wife, beautiful and strong, talking animatedly with a group of women about healing techniques. He saw the Orc elder, sitting in a place of honor, watching over everything with satisfaction. This was his life. This was what had come from that single moment of compassion years ago when he had defended a wolf pup from cruelty. That moment had led to Urga watching him, choosing him, risking everything to knock on his door. And he had chosen her back, and together they had built something beautiful. Nathan thought about the young man he had been, alone and lonely, working his farm and believing he was content. He had been so foolish, so limited in his imagination of what life could be. He had not known it was possible to love someone so completely, to build a family so strong, to create a legacy that would last beyond his own lifetime. Urga found him in his quiet corner and joined him, linking her arm through his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How grateful I am," Nathan replied, "for everything. For you, for our children, for this life, for the courage you had to choose me and the courage I found to choose you back." "We have been fortunate," Urga agreed. "We have faced hardship, but we have always had each other. That has made all the difference." "It has," Nathan said. He turned to face her fully, looking into the eyes of the woman who had changed his life. "I love you, Urga Jenkins, more than I can ever properly express." "I love you too, Nathan Jenkins," Urga replied, "today and every day, always." They kissed, soft and sweet, a reaffirmation of the commitment they had made a decade ago and had honored every day since. When they pulled apart, Amelia was calling for them, wanting them to join in a game their guests were organizing. Hand in hand, Nathan and Urga walked back to the party, back to their family and friends, back to the life they had built together against all odds. And as Nathan laughed at something Marcus said and watched Noah attempt to teach a group of human children an Orc dance, he sent up a silent prayer of thanks. For the day an Orc elder had brought her granddaughter to his gate and changed his life forever. The stars came out as the party continued, bright and clear in the country sky. Children ran through the grass, chasing fireflies and each other. Adults talked and laughed, sharing food and stories. And at the center of it all were Nathan and Urga, the human and the Orc, who had dared to love across impossible divides, who had fought for their right to be together, and who had built a life that proved love could conquer even the deepest prejudices. Years continued to pass, and Nathan and Urga eventually welcomed grandchildren, half-orc children born to their own half-orc children who had found partners of their own. The farm was passed to Amelia, who ran it with skill and care. Marcus became a renowned healer, combining human and orc medicine in ways that revolutionized treatment in the region. Noah became a teacher, educating both human and orc children about their shared history and working to build bridges between the communities. Nathan and Urga grew old together, their hair graying and their bodies slowing, but their love never diminishing. They spent their final years surrounded by family, watching their legacy grow and spread, seeing the world they had helped create become more accepting and unified. On a warm spring day, Nathan sat on the porch of the home he had shared with Urga for over 40 years. She sat beside him, her hand in his as always, and they watched their youngest grandchild play in the yard. The child was teaching a human friend an orc song, and the two children's laughter rang out like bells. "We did it," Nathan said softly. "We built something good." "We did," Urga agreed. "Together, we changed the world, one day at a time." "I would do it all again," Nathan said. "Every challenge, every hardship, every moment of fear or doubt. I would do it all again for the chance to spend my life with you." "As would I," Urga replied, squeezing his hand. "You are the best decision I ever made, Nathan Jenkins. My choice, my love, my life." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint colors across the sky, listening to the sounds of family all around them. And Nathan knew, with absolute certainty, that he was exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly who he was meant to be with, living exactly the life he was meant to live. The orc elder had said, "She chose you. I did not." But in the end, they had both made their choice, and it had been the right one. They had chosen love over prejudice, courage over fear, hope over despair. And that choice had changed everything, not just for them, but for everyone whose lives they had touched. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Nathan pulled Urga close and kissed her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered, "for choosing me, for loving me, for building this life with me." "Thank you," Urga whispered back, "for choosing me back, for seeing me, for loving me exactly as I am." They sat together as night fell, surrounded by the family they had created, the life they had built, and the love that had sustained them through everything. And in that moment, Nathan knew that whatever came next, they would face it together as they always had, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds and had refused to let anything tear them apart. Their story was one of courage and hope, of love that conquered prejudice, of two people from different worlds who proved that those differences could be bridges rather than barriers. And as their grandchildren played in the yard and their children laughed inside the house, Nathan and Urga sat together under the stars, content in the knowledge that their love had created something beautiful, something lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. She had chosen him. He had chosen her back. And together, they had changed the world.